Hello, welcome to class. My name is Adeniyi Lanre Olatunjoye from the Royal Tutors, and I am delighted to be connected with you in today's class. I believe you are as well. In today's class, we're going to be looking at how to tackle AQA GCSE English Language Paper 1. Guess what? We are going to be looking at question 1 to be precise. Question 1. But then we have a set of lesson objectives before us. The first here is what the question tests. This is the first thing we're going to look at. Then we'll move on to what the question looks like, what students must know to succeed, common mistake students make, model question, and answer will be the final thing we're going to look at in today's class. But before I continue the teaching, let me quickly show you the structure of question 1. So now this is the question, this is the structure right here. It says read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 5. List 4 things about Rosabelle from this part of the source. That's simple as that, right? Beautiful. Now let's get back to class. So right here, the first on the list is what the question tests. All right. Question 1 assesses a student's ability to retrieve explicit information from a specified part of the text. It does not test inference, interpretation, or analysis. Now, what exactly is the meaning of explicit? Do you want to try? What does it mean? Explicit information is an information that is directly stated in the text, all right? It does not require any special interpretation or inferences or even analysis. You just need to look at a text the way it is, lift the expression, and then write it down. You might decide to paraphrase. In other words, you write it in your own words, and that will be fine. Another thing you need to know about question 1 is that it usually attracts 4 marks. That's it. So that's the grade for question 1, 4 marks. But then you have to be very careful because it doesn't go beyond 4 marks. You need to make sure that you spend at most 5 minutes. You can spend below, you can use lesser than 5 minutes, but make sure that you do not go beyond 5 minutes. And of course, yes, I just explained that you need to do what we call retrieval of information. You look at the text and then you pick the information that you're being asked about. Moving on, the next thing you need to know is what the question typically looks like. Yeah, I know that I've shown you before, but now let's go deeper, okay? It usually says read lines 1 sometimes to 5, sometimes to 6, all right, of the source and list 4 things about dash. So your question could say list 4 things about the setting, or list 4 things about the character, list 4 things that happen, list 4 things about the weather, situation, room, etc. So you have to be prepared. But guess what? It's not going to go beyond 4 things. So they would ask you to list 4 things about a character, and then you just have to look at the text and extract the information, right? Moving on, we're going to talk about what students must know to succeed. It's obvious that a lot of students usually make egregious errors, especially when it has to do with tackling language paper 1 question 1. So we are going to look at the things that you need to know for you to get your complete score or a perfect score on question 1. Now, this is the first thing. You need to stick to the lines stated, right? You need to stick to the line stated. If the question says pick your answers from lines 1 to 6, you must not bring information from line 7 or beyond. Mm-mm, don't do that. If the question says you are to stick to lines 1 to 5, you must not go to line 6 to get an answer. No way. Markers will not award marks for anything outside the given lines. I'll repeat that. Markers will not award marks for anything outside the given lines. Two, you need to list four distinct things, all right? Four separate points. Each must be correct, no explanations needed. In other words, you can write what we call simple sentences. Simple sentences. You don't even need complex sentences. You don't need any explanations. You just need to write simple information. For instance, Johnny kicked the ball. If that information is in the text, you leave it like that, right? Good. Another thing you need to do, or you need to know for you to get a perfect score, is that you can quote or paraphrase. Of course, yes, I've mentioned this, but I'm going to say this again that both are acceptable. You can quote phrases, short, and you can even make use of your own words. Is that okay? To further buttress this, I'm going to move to the next point, which actually states that you need to avoid inferences. But then, wait a little bit. What does it mean to infer? Think about that for some moment. What exactly does it mean to infer? It's simple. Inference simply means drawing conclusion, all right? Looking at one or two facts in a text and then you draw your conclusion. Is that okay now? That is what inferences mean. Sometimes you've got to think deeply for you to be able to draw that conclusion. But guess what? For question one, you need to avoid inferences. Look at this. Students should not guess or interpret. Question one is about what is directly stated in the text. Is that okay now? Now, the next point we are going to talk about now is common mistakes students make. Common mistakes students make. You're going to learn a lot from this. One, writing outside a line references. I've mentioned this before, but I'm saying it again. This loses marks immediately. The moment your examiner finds out that your response is not from the given lines, let's say lines 1 to 5 or lines 1 to 6, your examiner would not even mark it at all. Mistake 2, using inference. I've mentioned that, but now let us see an example here. Now, this is an example of a text that says, she walked slowly. She walked slowly. This is an inference. She was depressed. Now, you don't need that for question one. You can paraphrase. You will see that the right answer that we have here is a paraphrase of the first one. She moved at a slow pace. It's the same thing as she walked slowly. So you don't need inferences at all. So students who infer lose mark immediately. Let's quickly look at mistake 3 that the students make. We have this. Giving only one idea in 4 sentences. Oh my goodness. You're going to lose a mark immediately. So let's see an example here. So you write something like it was dark, and then you move to the next um, line. You said it was very dark, and then you said it was extremely dark. You're basically saying the same thing using different adjectives. Mm-mm. You don't need to give one idea. Whenever you are told to write 4 things, probably about a character, you need to write 4 distinctive things about a character from the text. And obviously, you are going to find these expressions in the text. The fourth mistake that students make is that they quote entire sentences in when giving their answers. This wastes time and it isn't necessary at all. So make sure you avoid writing an entire sentence from the text. And the last one is writing explanation. Question one is not analysis and it demands no explanation at all. The next thing we're going to talk about for question one is time management. Time management. Students should spend no more than 5 minutes on question one. Please take this very seriously. Now, why am I saying this? Your question one carries 4 marks, right? And that is the lowest mark in the entire paper. Question 2, 8 marks. Question 3, 8 marks. Question 4, 20 marks. And then you have section B, you have 20 marks for your section B. Now, for section A, where you've got question 1 to 4, you have 45 minutes. Imagine 45 minutes and you have other questions where you need to respond, like you're writing an essay. So you have to be very intentional. You have to activate your time management skills. All right? Beautiful. So make sure you spend no more than 5 minutes on question one. What do you need? Fast reading, fast highlighting, 4 clean points. Fast reading, fast highlighting, 4 clean points. And one more thing, do not overthink this question. Do not overthink this question. Now, we are done with the 5 things that I wanted to talk about before moving to the sample questions. All right, we're here now. So let's see question one. 4 marks. This is it right here. And then the question says, read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 5. List 4 things about Rosabel from this part of the source. So what exactly is the task given to us? They want us to list 4 things about a character whose name is Rosabel. Now we need to go to the text and see where lines 1 to 5 is. Most times it's usually the first paragraph. But let us see if we are on the same page. So we have a question here. This is the insert. And we have question, okay, lines 1 to 5. This is lines 1 to 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's why we have 1 here, and then we have 5 here. All right, that's good. So this is it right here. Let's read the text. At the corner of Oxford Circus, Rosabel bought a bunch of violets, and that was practically the reason why she had so little tea. For his corn and a boiled egg and a cup of cacao are not sufficient after a hard day's work in a hat shop. As she swung onto the step of the bus, grabbed a skirt with one hand and clung to the railing with the other, Rosabel thought she would have sacrificed her soul for a good dinner, something hot and strong and filling. So this is it right here, and we are to select 4 things. We're to write 4 things about Rosabel. Now, I want us to make this very easy, so I'm just going to copy this text out and put it on a different paper so that we can, look at it at the same time, right? All right, here it is. So the question says, list 4 things about Rosabel from this part of the source. So we have the source here. We have to focus on Rosabel, not the environment, not the weather, but the character, Rosabel. We have to list 4 things. So you can pause the video and see if you can actually write out 4 things about Rosabel. But then let us read and select a few things about Rosabel. At the corner of Oxford Circus, Rosabel bought a bunch of violets. So this is talking about Rosabel and the action she took right here. So she bought a bunch of violets. Beautiful. So let's move on to see if there are other things about Rosabelle in this text. And that was practically the reason why she had so little tea. So we have a dash here. This dash is introducing an additional information, like an extra information for a scone and a boiled egg and a cup of cacao, and not sufficient after a hard day's work in a hard shop. Now, you see this part, we have a lot of things that's been said about Rosabelle, and we can get all the 4 points from this place. So the next point is that she had what? She had a scone and a boiled egg and what? A cup of cacao. Now, this is another point about Rosabelle. Okay, and here we have and not sufficient after a hard day's work in a hard shop. So, hard day. She had a hard day. She definitely had a hard day in, you know, at the working place. So that's why I'm going to underline this hard day. And we also have another information that says work in a hard shop. Of course, yes, it's part of this. Hard days work in a hard shop. So she worked in what? A hard shop. That's like another point. So how many do we have now? We have one, we have two, we have three, then we have four already. But then let's see if there are still more information in this text. So the next expression says, as she swung onto the step of the bus. That is an information about Rosabelle. She swung onto the step of the bus. Is another information about Rosabelle in this text. Grabbed a skirt. She grabbed a skirt. That's also another information. She grabbed a skirt with one hand. Yeah. And clung to the railing with the other. This is also another information now. You need to pay attention to this. You see that I am not putting everything together. I am selecting them in bits. All right. I am picking the answers one after the other. Don't forget all the strategies, the rules I gave you, that your answer has to be simple. Simple sentences, you don't need complex sentences, and it must have one idea. For instance, if I say she swung onto the step of the bus and grabbed her skirt with one hand, that is giving me two ideas, two different ideas. Your point must have one idea. How is that two different ideas? She swung onto the step of the bus is one idea. She grabbed her skirt with one hand is also another idea about the same character. So you need to make sure that you're picking your responses in bits. Is that okay? So let's see if we still have any other thing here. So this says Rosabelle thought she would have sacrificed her soul for a good dinner, something hot and strong and filling. So here, what did I get here? That Rosabelle wanted a dinner that was hot, strong, and filling. So right now, we are going to put all this information in on the page. Are you ready to go with me? So she what? She bought a bunch of ballots. That's the first one. She had a scone and a boiled egg and a cup of cocoa for tea. All right, so we need to correct the spelling for eggs. We were told to bring up four things, so we're just going to write four things. She grabbed skirt with one hand. And then one more thing, she had worked add all the full stop. So what this simply means is that you can get more than four information in the extract. But guess what? Take note, don't go beyond 4 points. If you were told to write four things about a character, don't write seven things about a character, just four things. So we wrote a lot of things here. We annotated a lot of things here. So you can decide to pick anyone that you like. All right. So in summary, this is how you respond to AQA GCSE English Language Paper 1, Question 1. We're going to go over very quickly the things that you need to know about. And number one, I said that you need to know what the question tests, all right? And then I said that the question assesses your ability to retrieve explicit information. Another thing I said again is that explicit information is an information that is directly stated in the text. You don't need to infer, you don't need any interpretation. We also looked at what the question typically looks like. And we mentioned a few things like they could tell you to list four things about the setting, four things about the character, four things about what happened, four things about the weather, situation, room, etc. And then we moved on to what you need to know to succeed. And I mentioned a few things. I said you must stick to the line stated. If they tell you to just go between or look at lines 1 to 5 or 6, do not go beyond lines 1 to 5 or 6. All right. And another thing again that we mentioned is that you should write four separate points. Each must be correct, no explanation needed. Each point must carry one idea. She bought a bunch of violets. Don't say she bought a bunch of violets and she had a scone, a boiled egg, and tea, whatever it is. No, don't say that. Your point, each point needs just one idea, right? And then I say that you can lift the quotes the way it is from the text, and then you can also paraphrase, meaning you can make use of your own word, right? So another thing that I said again is that you need to keep your answers simple, right? You don't need to write complex sentences, which is a combination of a dependent clause and independent clause. You don't need compound sentences for question one, which is a combination of two independent clauses. You just need simple sentences. That's all, and you're good to go. And one more thing is that you need to avoid inferences, avoid drawing conclusion, avoid overthinking, the question, so you don't get into the wrong part. All right. Thank you very much for paying attention to today's class. I am going to put a question on the screen. You should try it out on your own and just send the answers to the company's email account if you can. So this question right here is going to be your assignment. So just pause the video and tackle it immediately. All right, we have now come to the end of today's class. I hope to see you in my next class. Bye.